didn't really time this out, have we? So we'll have to play it by ear and see if we need to speed up probably the first video or slow down.
Just do the first section as we think we should, and then we'll adjust.
We've got audio on?
Yep. Very good. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's that about?
Audio came on.
I don't know why that was on there. Someone's added
I'm
it.
still hearing something, but I've obviously got a lag.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lag.
2,
I think we're still on.
1. Two.
That gives us that. What time are you on now?
I'm still got audio on.
4:14. How about now?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another special Yellow live webinar. Today we're here to talk about hyperlocal search, and joining me is Michael Watkins, who's the Director of Customer Performance and Analytics here at Yellow.
Hey,
Michael,
Damien.
welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome to everybody around the country who's joining us from all the way from Queensland down to Tasmania. We're here to discuss hyperlocal search. So Michael, tell me, what is all the hype with hyperlocal?
Look, it's really about, quite simply, making sure that you're taking advantage of being in front of the customers that matter the most to you in your local area.
Wonderful, really simple. But let's dig a bit deeper into hyperlocal. So there's a number of elements when we talk about hyperlocal search that we're going to cover off today. And we've got a little teaser for you to start now. So it's pretty simple when we look at hyperlocal versus a traditional type of search. Michael, explain to me, when a customer is looking from a hyperlocal perspective, what are they actually doing?
Yeah, so we can see this. This is a really simple example on screen: garage door openers. And what I want you to look at is there's a 400,000 listings here, right? So that's a huge volume of competition. And with that, those different terms comes different levels of competition, but also different levels of opportunity as well. And that's what hyperlocal is all about. When we transition through to a local term, which we'll bring up on screen as well, as soon as we do that, we drop down to under 20,000 opportunities, or under 20,000 different competitors on page one of Google. And that's where hyperlocal really comes in. It's really about making sure that you can make the most money out of these two different scenarios.
Great. So it's really quite a simple proposition, isn't it? When we look at customers who are searching with a location, they have that much more intent about what they're going to do.
Yeah, one of the big things about hyperlocal is it's really about geography. And so whilst that sounds really complex, geography is really about everything we do, and it's what underpins the search. It definitely underpins Google page one.
So those people who are using a location are searching with a much higher degree of focus.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah. Focus is a good word.
Great, and that really helps to cut through and give more opportunity to the potential businesses who are looking to take advantage of hyperlocal search.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting ones where you want to balance your books. In some cases, you want to be in front of the mass market, and in other cases, you want to pick and choose.
Great, excellent. So we've talked about competition, we've talked about intent, we've talked about the market. How does that actually translate to dollars?
Well, it translates to dollars with a couple of key points. One is around near me searches and how you can take advantage of some of the changes to how not only the big players like Google are operating, but also how consumers are searching.
Definitely. So you can see on the screen now a graph showing from 2015 through to almost today, the increase of people using a search containing near me. So that blue line you can see trending up really aggressively. That shows how much people are actually focusing on a need in the moment.
Yeah, in the last few years that's skyrocketed, and that's the opportunity we're talking about. When you transition to these different search terms, that not everyone jumps on board at the same time. And one of the interesting things about that graph that we saw before is the red line that was going through the middle, quite stable, that was people looking for phone numbers still. So people still do searches with the terms phone number in it, but they're also looking at time convenient searches, so things like near me or location intent searches as well, just to make it easier for them to find what they're looking for.
Definitely. And we know that mobile usage has had a substantial impact on the use of near me when it comes to users searching for local businesses. And I'm sure that we can see that when we look at the search engine results screens themselves. Yeah,
especially in mobile. So mobile has been a big shift, and we've got an example here which I think is quite interesting. It's nearly Easter, so I was recently in the office looking for some Easter eggs and just wanted to find what was close by. So supermarkets near me in the office. What you can see on screen, I know it's really small, but there's a Woolworths ad, a pay-per-click ad at the top there, focusing on the near me search term. And what I found interesting about this, that if that ad wasn't there, and you look at the Google My Business section, which is the next one below, Coles was the one that appeared in the Google My Business. So in our office, underneath us at the very foot is a Woolworths. Coles is actually across the street. So here's a good example of how Woolworths has taken advantage of hyperlocal to protect, in this case, people who will be searching for supermarkets in the area. And one of the things I always find interesting is, I thought people stopped searching for supermarkets, but it's still in our top 20 search terms within the Yellow network as well.
So it's something that people certainly are consistently looking for in their day-to-day lives.
Yep.
And these big businesses understand the need to capture that market and protect it, even if the customer what may well should be theirs. It's not always straightforward in today's digital landscape.
Correct, and there's a couple of other trends that are also linked to that near me search as well. So you may have noticed on your search browsers these days you have a microphone, and we've got the Google Home Assistants as well. So the near me part is really transitioning now into searches via voice, and there's a lot of movement that's happening there as well.
It's interesting when we look at voice versus traditional keyboard searches. The research shows that if I'm using a keyboard, my search is probably 2, 3, maybe 4 words at the most. When we transition to voice searches through those voice assistants or through the voice assistants on our mobile devices, the searches we use start to become 4, 5 and 6 different keywords long.
Yeah, it comes a little bit longer and a little bit more conversational, and we saw that also in that first example where people started adding the location was the next evolution to search, where they added the location term to make it a little bit more relevant to them for what they're looking for.
Definitely, and it makes for that more qualified buyer. The more words we use, the more detail we give to the search, the more likely we are to be further along our purchasing journey as a consumer and more closer to that point where we're actually going to buy something.
Absolutely.
So let's pause for a moment and have a look at why we think hyperlocal search is important for those businesses out there to take advantage of right now. So we know that out of all the people who use Google to perform a search, approximately 75% of those use a location.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So the location intent when you add the suburb to the term, but also things like near me, you don't actually have to add the location to the term. It's all automated in the back end these days. So location is a part of nearly every search.
Yeah. Next up, Comscore are predicting that by 2020, 50% of all searches will be done via voice. Michael, tell us how we think that's going to impact hyperlocal search.
Look, it sounds like it's impossible, but the reality is that we're actually ahead of that target. That's happening a lot quicker as people, I suppose, become more familiar and used to using some of those terms. Essentially, it's really about making it easier for consumers to connect with businesses.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, smartphones. So we're well into the smartphone revolution. Tell us about smartphones and how the fact that more than half of searches now on Google are done from a mobile device.
Yeah, so we've been talking about the mobile revolution for a number of years now, and this is a really vital one. Google has just started this week rolling out its mobile first index, and what that means is that if you don't have a mobile site this year, it's going to be really, really hard for you to be seen at all. So they're really focusing on mobile as the device of choice.
Excellent. Well, we've gone through the reasons why and what hyperlocal is. Let's pause for a moment and go to a quick commercial. Unfortunately, the only sponsor we could get today was ourselves, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Cool.
Yellow, yellow. Yellow. Yellow has great Australian businesses that you can rely on.
Yellow, yellow.
From doctors to dog groomers.
Yellow, yellow.
And did you know you can book appointments for whatever you need, all in one place?
Yellow, yellow.
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 Need it? Yellow has it.
Yellow.
Find, choose, connect at yellowpages.com.au.
Yellow. Yellow.
So welcome back, everyone. We've been through quite a bit of heavy information to start with and some stats. So let's take a break from that, Michael, and let's look at what a business can actually do about hyperlocal search. Talk us through a typical strategy that a business might use.
Yeah, so one of the things to start with is we need to look at the map. And when every business is looking at their local area, it really starts with a catchment zone. Every business has a different catchment zone, and what we're looking at on screen now is where I live, out in West Melbourne, and I live in Werribee. So our catchment zone for Werribee would normally look like a radius. So we'll put that up on screen. And what this is a typical 25 kilometre radius that that a general small to medium business may be targeting, and it's often used for all digital marketing reach.
Yeah, so I see that's quite wide. So in this instance, 25 kilometres from Werribee actually takes in bits of the Geelong Peninsula and even the Melbourne CBD.
Yeah, and what's a little bit frustrating about this approach in this case is that it could have wastage there. So we need to make sure that businesses don't miss out on the opportunities, so they have to cast the net out, but at the same time, how do we control it from a digital point of view to ensure they're getting the types of leads that they're looking for?
Wonderful. So we'll pop up on screen in a moment for you an example of what a hyperlocal strategy might look like. Michael, talk us through how a business might execute this.
Yeah, so this is really the next step on how we would approach it. And you can see the individual suburbs and locations which underpin search and Google, Google page 1. And what we would do first is, we'd first ask a business, how far will you be willing to travel? And also, how far are you expecting consumers to travel to you? And that really depends on if you're a go-to business or a destination business or a hybrid. That's a really important part. And the reason why that's important is because petrol impacts profit. And so one of the opportunities there is to target hyperlocal based on where you're going to make the most amount of profit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know it's hard to see here, Michael, but there's a freeway that runs right through the middle of that map that you can see on the screen. This is a highway which makes life easier, faster and cheaper to get around. So what does this do for a business's hyperlocal strategy?
Yeah, this is a really good technique that is often overlooked when you think back to that radius targeting. So in this case, if I was a business based in Werribee, what I might do is I might actually strategically target Williams Landing and Altona, which are along that highway, as opposed to Werribee South, which is a little bit off the main track. And that's because if it's easier for consumers to get to me or for me to get to them, you've got that double benefit.
Definitely. So I get it. It seems like a really simple strategy to undertake to be able to maximise the amount of coverage you can get and get in front of the right type of people. What else should you do?
The next thing to look at when you're looking at those circles of opportunity are really around population. So population is a number thing. How many households are there? Households also generally talk about how many search volume there is on Google. So population is a big one. Not every suburb locality is equal, and you need to make sure you pick and choose that so that you take advantage of the opportunities right for your business.
So what I'm hearing is about being strategically selective and really picking the locations which give you the best chance to capture a new customer. Should you also consider competition?
Yeah. So more population, more search, more competition, absolutely. It's really test and learn in that space, because in many instances you want to tackle those big location areas. But the other part to quality is who is that population? Who is that opportunity? And this is where it takes a few different layers. One would be around demographics, if it's older people or younger people who live in those suburbs. Another one would be around if it's business to business, residential or commercial. It really depends on what your individual business is to determine which of those circles you would be crossing off your list and which of those circles you'd be focusing on for a hyperlocal strategy.
Sure. So while it sounds quite complex, really it's quite simple. It's essentially just the process. It's how we get better results.
Yeah, it is. It is how we get better results. So you can see there population, location, and a bit of common sense. So population is around, as we said, people who live in the area and the volumes. Population includes the searches, but also the demographics. So when you think about population, remember it's also about who is that population. Location, the big part about location is to remember that profit and not just how far you're willing to go to get business, but think of your consumers. If they're going to be expected to travel too far, they may not, and that'll vary from business to business. And the common sense one is make sure it aligns to your business objectives. Fish where the fish are, but remember competition. So choose something that's going to get you the return on investment. That's got to be a big focus.
Yeah, that common sense one is the real X factor, isn't it? Where are the most valuable jobs for me, and how am I pinpointing that? So
and two identical business types in the same area might have different ways they can both independently be successful. So it really comes down to you as the business owner and your strategies and what will work for you.
Awesome. Some great tips, Michael. Thank you. And it's definitely a conversation that we want our viewers to have with their representatives out in the field. And our sponsor was generous and actually bought 2 ads today.
Great.
So when we come back, we'll have another guest, Chris, who's our SEO operations manager, to talk more about page 1 of Google and how it can help your business.
For 138 years, we've been famous for connecting businesses with customers.
G-O-G-G-O.
Not happy, Jen!
That's what's made us the champion of Aussie SMEs. And we're still as relevant today as we were yesterday. Maybe even more so. Our customers' success relies on us delivering seamless ways for consumers to find, choose and connect. So it's time to say yellow again.
Yellow.
To Australia's largest business directory with 1.5 million listings.
Yellow.
To 6.5 million searches every month.
Yellow.
To over 800,000 connections a week.
Yellow.
To an average of 115,000 business connections a day. Australia relies on the survival of small businesses, and Australian small businesses rely on us. So it's time to roll up our sleeves and get working.
Yellow.
To stay the #1 search destination, we're updating our offering to support our yellow proposition. Find, choose, connect. We've simplified our structure by creating a yellow universe. And a revolutionary structure needs an evolutionary identity. And we're better to start than with our walking fingers. Recognisable, powerful, it embraces our heritage and updates our brand for tomorrow. Welcome to Yellow.
Yellow.
To bring the brand to life, we've created a new campaign to remind Australians how relevant we are today by presenting inarguable and surprising facts about what makes Yellow the #1 business directory in Australia. The more Australians learn about us, the more likely they might say hello, or indeed, yellow.
Yellow.
Here's just a peek of how we're launching to market. Using real businesses with real people highlighting real facts. So we're working harder than ever to connect business with customers.
Yellow. Yellow.
Because our success relies on our capacity to help consumers find, choose and connect with our customers better than anyone else. And when we champion our SMEs and their customers, all Australia wins. Australia, it's time to say yellow.
Yellow. Yellow.
Yellow.
Yellow.
So welcome back, everybody. I'd like to welcome Chris Van Landenberg. Chris is our SEO operations manager here at Yellow. Chris, first and foremost, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Chris, we know when we look at hyperlocal search, Google says we need to look at 3 main things. Relevance, so how well does your content, your listing, match up to the search which somebody's completing? Distance, how far away you are from that person. And prominence, how popular is your website, your listing, and how well do people know your business? Tell us a bit about these factors when it comes to local search and what you think.
Sure. So relevance is really important, and what we're talking about there is making sure that you have complete and detailed information. You want to make it as easy as possible for Google to match you with the relevant audience. Distance is really pretty straightforward. It's distance, how far you are from the potential search location. And prominence really just comes down to your brand. So it's based on information that Google knows about your business, whether that's based on links, articles, reviews play a big part in this. And also your location within web search. So it just shows that SEO best practices apply to local search as well.
Cool. What about the things that you should be wary of or avoid when it comes to making sure you stay prominent in local search?
Sure. So it's really just about being true and accurate. You don't want to try and game the system. Google's really savvy these days, so you don't want to make up sort of listings which are in locations which you really don't appear. Just true and accurate information across the board.
Great. So it's all about page 1. Michael, tell us about a bit about what's happening in the search and directories industry and market at the moment.
Yeah, so the IAB pulls search and directories together, and the expenditure in Australia alone in that space is $3.6 billion a year. So there's a lot of investment going on onto page 1 of Google, and it's really important that you understand or get the right advice when you're navigating that.
Chris, tell us what success looks like when we talk about page 1 of Google.
Sure. So success for me is pretty simple. It's just taking up as much real estate as possible. Different people search in different ways, and you want to make sure that wherever they're looking, you have a presence. So every instance that you appear on the page is one less than that your competitor does.
I think that's a great point. The more times on the page you can appear, there's one less time one of your competitors can. So let's have a look at an example of a page 1 on Google. And we'll work through each of the points for people out there watching to make sure that we're clear and we all understand exactly what we're looking at. So the top blue arrow you can see there is the Google AdWords advertising. And these are businesses which have chosen to advertise on a search which is relevant to them. Secondly, the red arrow indicates the local pack or the Google Maps listings. And these are businesses which are typically local to the person completing the search. Third, the green arrow is what we would call the local business organic appearance. So a business who's local to that area and their website appearing on page 1. And finally, the yellow arrow indicates a directory listing. And in this case, yellowpages.com.au and appearing on page 1 of that search. Chris, let's have a look at the local pack. And that's driven by a Google My Business listing. Tell us a bit about Google My Business listing and how that can help a business to reach page 1 of Google and what they can do.
Sure. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail coming up. But I think, as you can see, it's a massive part of the page. It takes up a lot of real estate, like I was saying earlier, and it's just an easy way for a local business to get a local presence.
Yeah.
So, sorry, it's really important in that regard.
Excellent. And Michael, talk us through the organic space of page 1. So how can a business take advantage of the of what we call these days the organic appearance that they might get?
Yeah, this is a particularly good example where they've hit the page 1 4 times for the same business, and that's why we chose it. So in the organic space, there's really the two parts that you can have. You've got the business website itself, and obviously you want to make sure that you get that on page 1 as much as possible, but also other quality directory sites like the Yellow Pages already have presence on page 1, which is interesting. One of the questions we often get is, do people still search at the top, or do they click at the bottom? Where do they actually click? And what we see with behaviour is over time we're sort of conditioned to swipe further down, but the reality of the volume is really different, which we'll bring up on screen again.
So where do clicks actually go?
So this is a study that's come through just last year, and these studies get done every year or so. But there's only 20% of the clicks that actually go through to the AdWords. The big opportunity and the often missed opportunities are entire organic space where you either have your website getting traffic, so direct to your website, or via an internet directory on page 1.
Excellent. So let's start at the top. We talked about AdWords. And the evolution of pay-per-click advertising has been really interesting from a marketing perspective. We saw on that previous slide 20% of people click on the ads. And I know there'd be a lot of people out there going, wow, that seems like it's actually a lot. Because all day, every day, we hear no one clicks on the ads.
Yeah, well, it's pay-per-click. So one of the first things is that you only pay when you click, so it really doesn't matter if you're there and you're not being clicked to a certain extent. But what's interesting you can see on screen now is over time, we've seen Google and also Bing extend that real estate. So when people have got really short views, they're more likely to click at the top. When it's a longer decision and they're willing to look more for what they're aiming for, they'll scroll down further. But pay-per-click is one of those ones that you can't ignore being the top.
Definitely. Now, Chris, let's move a bit down the page now and let's look at the local pack, which is driven by a Google My Business listing. What are some of the tips you can give to our customers out there on how they can improve their presence on Google My Business?
Sure. So first of all, you've got to verify and claim your local business listing. This gives you control of the information that it displays. And secondly is completing all the data fields. So putting that information on there. We talked about relevancy earlier, and it obviously makes it a lot easier for Google to match you with a relevant audience if you complete as much information as possible. Keep it up to date. Update your trading hours, especially a time like this, looking over the Easter long weekend. If you have any changes there, make sure you reflect them. You want to make sure that customers have a good experience. So if they're coming out to your business, you are actually open. Add photos, put as much info on there as possible. A huge one for me is encouraging and managing reviews from your clients. So responding to any negative ones, encouraging positive ones. It not only has an impact on your your actual position in the local pack. You can improve your position by getting really good volume of reviews. But also, once you get about 5, you'll see the actual stars displayed on your listing as well, which is a good look for potential consumers.
Excellent. And Chris, how can businesses out there manage that Google My Business presence, particularly if they're a bit time poor?
Well, it's something that we can do for you. Any of our Yellow customers that undertake an SEO or a pay-per-click program, we'll do that on your behalf.
Great news. Wonderful. So let's keep moving through. And we know that page 1 below the local pack or the maps listings is often called the organic section. Michael, why is yellow and websites on the screen right now?
The key thing here is about what you as a business owner have control over, and the two biggest levers you can pull are around the content on your website and the content and your presence through any listings. And that's really important because both of those things often feature well in that first page organic. And as we saw earlier on, the volume of opportunity there is much greater than the volume of clicks that happen in the paid section. The other benefit too is from an organic point of view, over time, because you're not paying every individual time, you're just paying for your investment in those two things, it often works out to be more cost effective.
Wonderful. Chris, let's jump back over to you. When we look at a web page and a business listing like Yellow, is there a substantial difference between how you would try to get either of those things onto a page 1 Google search?
Sure, I think there's definitely some common traits, and Michael touched on a few. I mean, obviously content being king. So we're talking about things like structure, heading, titles, really just talking about what you do and where you do it. So content is really important, and good quality content that is on a trusted platform or website is key. So Yellow appears on the first page for a lot of these listings because we've been around for a long time, we have authority, people know what they're going to get when they click through to Yellow. They're going to get relevant business details. And websites as well, if you have an SEO program, if you've built some authority over time, you'll also get a presence on that first page.
Wonderful, excellent. So Michael, I'll throw it back to you. How does the organic section of page 1 of Google impact hyperlocal search?
Yeah, so it varies because of search terms. And so let's bring up on screen a tool that we use to help our customers understand where they sit, right? So you want to understand, where does your business sit on page 1, for what type of terms that are relevant to the search volume and opportunity. And depending on what type of competition is in the area, sometimes it's easier to get your website to rank. Sometimes it's easier to take advantage of something like Yellow that may already be ranking. And we often find that Yellow is at the top of some of those primary category keywords across a lot of local locations across Australia.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, Michael, we are obviously here in Melbourne, and to rank for the 200 and something different suburbs in Melbourne for a hyperlocal search for a local business is going to be a challenge, yeah?
Yeah, and the key here is to play to your strengths and double up where you can.
So there are no cookie cutter solutions for every.
No, it'll vary case by case.
Wonderful. So thanks, Chris and Michael. We've obviously had a lot of information to go through today. We've been a very information heavy webinar, but that's great. I think that businesses all around Australia are really looking for tangible tips that they can use to really help to grow their hyperlocal presence in the places that matter for them. Let's go around the grounds a bit and have a look at some of the top tips that you guys would have to help businesses really supercharge their hyperlocal, there's a lot of descriptive words there.
A lot of hyperlocal.
Yeah, to really make the most of their hyperlocal search in the areas that matter to them. Michael, I'll get you to start off for us. Number 1.
One of my favourite tips is go and get yourself a printed map and get some red thumbtacks and start putting on that map your most valuable customers that transact. Over time, you'll understand which suburbs and localities they're coming from, and that's where you should start your hyperlocal strategy.
Wonderful. Chris?
Even if you don't have a physical location, there is a service area option within Google My Business, so make sure you take advantage of that.
Wonderful. Michael, back to you.
So point number 3, the communities. Often you'll sponsor a sporting club or a footy team. They've all got websites too. Get them to link back to your website. Get that backlink from the community pages.
Number 4.
So we talked about optimizing for relevance, distance and prominence, and content is really key there, but you have to make sure that you have the pages or the listings specific to the areas that you want to service.
Great. And finally, number 5.
Look, there's lots of ways to get onto page 1. Play to your strengths, take advantage of the mix. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but be selective.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Michael. We certainly appreciate you both joining us today. For those of you who are out there watching, we do have some special multi-packs which are available for you to take advantage of the areas in your own localities which matter the most to you. So have a chat to your sales representative that's either sitting next to you or available on the phone, and really take the next step in connecting with those customers that have high amounts of purchase intent and high amounts of value to your business. Again, thank you for watching. Hope everybody has a safe Easter and an enjoyable Easter, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.